So welcome back to the Wedding Capture Co, which is a podcast for wedding photographers and videographers with myself, Tom, and my good buddy, Chris.
Hello.
So in this episode, we are talking about the big topic that is style. Now, I feel like style is such a general topic that encompasses lots of other things. So we do try and tackle this beast and keep it kind of as much of a sensible topic as we can. But we talk about how we started our styles, how our styles have evolved, the things along the way which have changed our styles, and kind of the ways that maybe you can think about your style and how that encompasses what you do in your business too. So yeah, there's a lot in this subject. Okay, let's just jump straight in. I think that we'll talk about how well the last episode did. I think that's probably a really good place to start.
That is a good place to start, yeah.
That's it. So
because we were really happy with it when we recorded it.
And it feels like ages since we recorded it as well, because we recorded it and then the other episode came out first. Yeah. It felt like from listening to like it being out in the world and us listening to it till when we actually had the chat, felt like a bit of time. Yeah, a little bit of time
to get it out as well. So we were like ready to go with it. We had a couple of reels lined up and things as well. So
again, so huge thanks to Rue for coming on and giving us what ended up being pretty much most of his day as well. Yeah. Obviously, you heard the nearly 2-hour episode that we did. There was probably about 20 minutes of chat that we put a little bit in of at the start before we jumped on. Yeah. And then there was probably about half an hour's chat talking about meal deals after. At least before and after. There was probably like a half an hour before and maybe an hour afterwards of us chatting. Yeah, But I think, again, you definitely got the juicy nuggets out of it. I think it's to say that, it's really easy to see in kind of why he's successful as he is and why Coda is going to be the success that I think it's going to be for kind of what's gone into it and all the things that have led up to him making that conference.
I think it was good on this podcast, we're kind of just speaking with just us two to like a camera and microphones, but to speak about something which is like trending almost and has like the hype behind it. Yeah. It was nice to like get excited about that and talk about that with the person who's actually organising it.
Yeah, I think also as well, and we said it during that episode as well, is that, we do sit, say, in this room and kind of and speak across the table, but although that he was on like a tiny like reflected iPad for a teleprompter, it really did feel that he was there.
It did, yeah.
And he was honestly a lovely guy to talk to. Like, I'd never spoken to him or met him before he appeared on that screen in front of me.
Yeah.
But within sort of that first sort of 20 minutes, like at one point I was chatting to him while you were like fudging cables and sorting links out. And it turned out that we had a mutual friend, then we were talking about something else. And we kind of dove straight in and were talking about old mates before we even started the episode really. And I think that really helped to kind of make it the kind of just the extension of these conversations that we have, but with someone who's, at the pinnacle of what I do.
It's much easier when people are on our level and it's like, because it's an informal podcast and we're not doing interviews and things like that. So if we can get the conversation started before we hit the record button, it just flows on from there, doesn't it?
Yeah, and also like no shade to other podcasts, because I've listened to a couple of the other interviews that he's done and they have all been really great. But I'm really grateful that he did manage to give us that amount of time. Yeah. And it wasn't just a kind of broad stroke of what he's done and what he's going to do.
It was a long episode as well.
Hopefully you guys felt that it felt as informal and we were really just kind of chatting really quite kind of loosely about it, and for him to kind of share as much as he did as well. I think for us it's going to go down as definitely one of our sort of landmark episodes. I think I think it definitely moved the needle for us here, and hopefully a few of you have come on board after listening to that episode too.
Yeah, the quality of information was good. Like it's one of those where I'd love to listen to an episode like that, where it's like if you're heading to and from a wedding and it's like an hour each way, that fills up the whole journey.
Yeah.
And also there's, like I say, like a lot of information there. We spoke about the awards, we spoke about Coda, general like gear and filming and things like that as it is, and there was a lot in it. So I feel like afterwards we both thought, that's one of our best. And I've been telling people if you're going to listen to one,
that's the one to start with. If you've got to spare 2 hours, that's the one to listen to.
Yeah.
And also, again, like within sort of hours of it going out, we had a couple of really, really lovely emails from people about it.
Yeah.
And that's led to someone else approaching us and saying that they would like to come on as well. So we're in the pipelines of sorting out our next guest now off of the back of listening to that one.
Next 2 guests. We've got 2 guests lined up.
It's exciting, isn't it?
Consider it. So I mean, we've never really been that podcast who wants to get on a guest for every episode, which is why we continue to do these. But like, as obviously word spreads and stuff, people want to come on, and as if they've got something to talk about, we're more than happy to.
Yeah, and we're very aware that we only know so much. Or there's only so much of our opinions that can come across without us not wanting to bring other people in, and all the time that people have got, say, like an interesting viewpoint to talk about. I think it's worth getting people on, but don't worry worry, we're not going to become a guest-based podcast where every episode will be someone
Just
new.
an interview, yeah.
But I think probably every sort of, hopefully we can keep that steady stream of good people wanting to come and talk to us for 2.5 hours. That, yeah, probably once every sort of 4th or 5th episode, we'll try and get someone in to, spout some wisdom that we don't have.
Yeah. Yeah, so keep an eye out for that in the next couple of months. There's going to be a couple more guests, I believe. So
yeah, and we're not going out to who they are until it's been recorded, because I never want to jinx these things. And that's like, but the people that have approached us and have lined up, like, when we started this, we were very under the illusion that kind of we would enjoy having the conversations and take something away from it selfishly for ourselves.
Just put it online and hope for the best.
Yeah, and now that it is starting to grow, and obviously then that the workshop was a really good confidence boost, the fact that more of you are coming by getting these people on, and then say people like Rue saying, yes, that he listened to the pod before he spoke to us, and now the other people that have approached us and said they would like to come on, the fact that they even know that we exist, I think is a really, really cool thing.
Buzzing about that. I met a photographer the other day, and he was like we messaged the night before, and he's like, I'm not gonna lie, I've not heard of you, I don't know your work or whatever, because I said I'll follow you and like your work, and then when we were chatting at lunch, he was like, hang on, I've listened to one of your podcasts. Even though
he actually was like, I don't know who you are at all.
Yeah,
but he actually listened to
a whole episode of the podcast, which is quite interesting.
That's mad, isn't it? You sat there chatting over dinner, which most people like in this podcast too.
Yeah,
and then he was like, your voice sounds really familiar. That's bizarre.
It's because he knew Kirsty, who we had on the podcast. I think he listened to that episode. Yeah. No, that's cool. But yeah, so today we wanted to talk a little bit about style. So about nailing your style, about how styles can change, and probably talk a little bit about our journeys in how we've sort of, and I think it's really interesting because we were speaking before this about how you know your own style, but like Tom was saying, as a photographer, you don't really get to see how other photographers shoot, right?
Yeah.
But we always say, like, we both say that we're all shooting the same thing in more or less, 80% the same way. It's just having your own thing that you sort of lean into, isn't it? So yeah, we want to talk about how to nail your style and hopefully give you, an insight into our thought process when we think about ours.
Yeah, because I think if you sort of start the journey at the very beginning, I think it's the easiest place to go, is that at the moment, if you were entering the industry in 2024, that it's very evident, the conversations on social media and this and that style has never been more of a thing that you need to have. Do you know what I mean? Like, people always talk to you now, or even, kind of couples are getting down to these, they're very aware of these dark and moody, light and airy. Like, they're kind of spouting that words back to you. Where when I started, and probably the same when you started, is that people had styles, they lent into certain parts of their day, but it wasn't as clear cut. Like, photographers weren't put in boxes in the same way, or very, I don't feel that probably back in sort of 2010, 2012 when I started filming weddings, that those styles were a lot more broad, or there was a lot less scope or difference in wedding photography. The people that were starting to do these kind of newer things were seen as really outlandish and out there and different from the rest of us, where now there's probably a lot of people doing an array of different styles, but you can start to quickly quite group them and go, okay, well, they're the alternative bunch, they're the luxury bunch, and it kind of, when we started, maybe I personally have been on a little bit more of a journey with style, because I don't think it was as much of an essential probably 10, 12 years ago that it is if you're starting your business today.
You were saying that, or you put in your notes that, like, when you started, because you were doing different things to, like, perhaps people who have been in industry for a while, you felt the need to go alternative photography as your style.
I think alternative was probably one of the first kind of, for me anyway, the first things that I was probably called. And then there was that kind of wave, wasn't there? At the moment, I would say that editorial was kind of the buzzword of a style, where probably, 5-7 years ago, there was a sea of people that were alternative photographers, and not particularly they were photographing lots of brides with blue hair and face tattoos, but they were just doing something which wasn't traditional, because there was a lot more kind of still classical traditional photography around, that if you weren't that, you were considered alternative.
But then when alternative then becomes mainstream, you're not alternative
exactly,
anymore.
That's it. And you're not, because you're not offering an alternative to the tradition, because tradition's probably now the more alternative than if you were doing something really, really sort of classic and stuff, that would be considered more alternative than what maybe I was doing then.
That's a puzzle, isn't it? It's trying to figure
it is, isn't it? It's kind of, it's a weird one. But definitely, like, when I started, again, because maybe, and probably like a lot of people, never set out of ambitions to make wedding photography my full-time career. I was photographing a lot of bands, doing some documentary stuff, and then was, oh, you've got this wedding. And like the fact that someone wanted to pay me money to shoot a wedding, they were my people straight away, because they had, you know, they had £20 notes in their hand they wanted to give me. And then, you know, that wedding bounced to another wedding and to another wedding. And, you know, if I look back at probably those first 10 or 20 weddings that I did, there's no demographic at all. No. Like, you know, one couple were like second time around and quite old, and then there was another couple that were really young, and then there was, you know, one was a church and one was like a registry office. And
but you need to do all of those as well to get an idea of like the couples you want to target, which we try not to talk too much about in this because we've already spoken about that, but also the things that you want to hone in on in terms of what you value when you're filming or taking photos.
And if you don't know anything, you means you also don't know what you don't want to do as much as what you do want to do. Yeah. So I think in some ways, again, I'm not starting my business in 2024, but if you are starting your business now, I imagine that is one of the hardest things. It's so easy to look on Instagram and see these people that are shooting these amazing things, and that comparison is so much more under the microscope than it was when I started. I imagine it's really hard to not feel, well, I need to start direction, I need to start honing in now, I need to start honing in. Where I think for probably the first year or two, you do need to just shoot everything and then let your own personal preferences or your own feeling towards those days and go, well, these type of days I have much nicer time at. Yeah. And this stuff was really stressful, or it's really not me, or I felt really out of place at that wedding. And then your style will slowly start to form. Because
I think similar to you when you started, is when I started, there was, not everybody, but there was still a lot of like the sort of camcorder-y music video, just like that kind of thing.
Karaoke,
like, is it no, honestly. I did one of those, but it was.
Did you?
It was to be played at the wedding, so we got played at the wedding. So I went to like the guy's house and he drove me around all his family and stuff, and we did karaoke as a surprise.
What was the song?
It's such a nice couple. It was well cool. I can't remember what the song was.
Man.
That's my bad.
They're one of those things that, like, you never know, you kind of look at like.
I spent a day with a groom before the wedding, just like going to all his family's house. It's crazy.
Like things that age really badly. Like they're going to find that dusty VHS somewhere, like plug it in, and like 20 years time, his kids are going to be watching him like in his car, like he's in like. This is the way to Amarillo, but the driving version. Like.
I really wish I remember what the song was, but I can't remember. But yeah, so it was a lot of like, you know, 30-minute music videos, and then maybe the speeches we put in a chunk in the middle somewhere, and like I felt like the American stuff is where I learnt from, so I felt the need, you know, watching my couples, and when I was going in, like trying to find my style, to say, you know, I'm bringing the American style of videography over here. It's shorter films, so you're looking at like 15-20 minutes. It's more like cinematic, so instead of like just walking around with like the camera, it's like very like gimbal and like slider and that kind of thing. And that was me trying to be different to all the people that have been doing video for a long time as well. That was my alternative, was I'm bringing over the American style with having the speeches in the background and having a shorter film and that kind of thing. But now that is everybody that does video. So now I'm no longer that.
But you say that, but I bet if you went out there are still some people out there which are, you know, 20 and 30 years into this thing, still rocking their camcorder, still doing those very long, you get a feature film of your day, which is a whistle-stop tour from prep to the first dance. And like you say, it kind of is some like montage of prep, then you stop and have the whole ceremony, and you can't dive in and go, I only want that bit. Like, you have to sit and watch the whole damn film. But because I say there's a much larger chunk of the industry now, because it's kind of caught up with itself, if you like, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. I met somebody at a workshop, and they said, oh, you know, I've been doing these longer films and I'd really like to cut down, but I just feel like couples expect the longer, like the big documentary edits from me. I was like, but if you change it, people won't expect that then, like, straight away. So,
and imagine it, and it can be hard, I think, where, you know, I've had these conversations with other people, is where if you do want to start to change your style, if you feel that you've created something or created a business which is quite signature for yourself, if you want to start moving too much away from that, especially when we do book weddings, you know, a year, 2 years in advance, etc., is that the people that have booked you, you know, like people are booking me now for 2025. If I decided that I was just going to come like high-end editorial by then, and they weren't expecting, you know, me to turn up and just shoot lots of like, you know, kind of really like low contrast black and whites on their day, or I'm only going to shoot prep in film or whatever, like they would feel that they didn't quite get what they were sold on.
Yeah. But so, making a U-turn is perhaps a bit extreme, but then I feel like you can do that over a long period of time in just what you show.
Well, I think naturally it does. Yeah. Like we were saying, weren't we, in you know, other times, that our work has definitely evolved over time. Yeah. And by, you know, in inspiration episodes and other episodes, or curating your work episode, is that as a wider piece of thing, you probably do encompass multiple styles kind of within the core of your day. But it might just be that because I deem myself as a more documentary photographer, I wouldn't share anything. If there was a more posed element of the day, I would probably not likely to share that on my socials, where I'd like to show more moments, where someone that would consider themselves more editorial are probably only going to show mostly the couple shoot and maybe like those cool details, where you don't really see venue and detail shots on mine, because that's not kind of my style. But I still take them.
Yeah, exactly. So you're saying like that you do take it. What you portray as your style can sometimes be different to what it actually is.
Yeah. So
we were saying there are some super creative photographers out there who are creating like bits of art from their couple shoots where like, you know, it's just a head in one shot and things like that. And you look at their Instagram and you're like, this is so cool and like artistic. But you say if we look to their galleries, you still have the shot of the couple behind the cake, just like, and you still have like the candids of just regularly framed candids.
That's it. It's working on that assumption, isn't it? That like say you look at someone, say some of these real sort of creative sort of pioneers, and you scroll their feed and you go, this is incredible. Like the level of kind of say like organisation or just skill or innovation that are in those shots. But it's like, but you know that whole gallery can't look like that, but you assume it does because that's all that they show.
That's what they portray.
And I remember going a few years ago now, going to a conference, and Ferj Aristi was talking, who's probably one of those kind of real icons of that real like amazingly innovatively creative style. And him saying there like, I take the same photos that you do. Is that this is just what I'm known for. So this is all that I share, because that builds like, and it, you know, known as like his signature style. But he's like, I'm still taking that photo of Dad and the bride just getting out, stood outside the car before they walk into the ceremony. But because it's so the same as everybody else takes, it doesn't make me stand out. And so there's nothing signature to him about it. So he doesn't share it. And I think if you do want to move style, like you say, I don't think you can just all of a sudden just U-turn. But there's probably a lot of those things that are already in your wheelhouse, that you just start leaning into that a little bit more and showing a bit more of that, and then it kind of comes around.
Curating parts of your style.
So it still feels familiar to kind of the people that have booked you, but then the new people that you're opening up to, it kind of leans.
Yeah, and you'll always do that as well. Like if you feel like you want to do a little bit of a change or change the way you're doing things, that happens gradually anyway, because normally there's a bit of a delay between, right, I feel like I want to start, using an ultra wide angle for the detail shots or something, or maybe I'm going to get anamorphic for the dance. Like, you start doing that gradually, then you bring it in, then it becomes more of a thing, and over time you show more and more of that until that is your style.
You let it seep in, don't you, and then kind of off of it goes. But I think also as well is that I feel that, whilst I would say, or people say, oh, that's very much your style, that sometimes, and I think we spoke about this a very, very long time ago, in like the inspiration episode, where like you said, one of your biggest sources of inspiration were your couples. That there's certainly, you have a core style that you say is your style, but at certain times on the day you will lean into different elements of that style based on the people that are in front of you. Like if you have a couple that book you because they love your style but then are naturally more reserved, you're not going to try and force them to do something super editorial. Go, should we get champagne and spray it? Because they'll just find the most awkward thing in the world. So you might lean into kind of the more quieter parts of what you do. Or maybe if they're a really emotional couple, like you would say your films are high energy, high this and the rest of it. But if you have like a dad that sobs all day, you can't not put that in the film. So you still take that footage and present it in your way. But you wouldn't say that's high energy at all.
No. I think that comes down to flexibility, isn't it? Like you can have your style, but you can be flexible around that as well. So when I chat to my couples, like before they book me, I'll say that why are you booking me? And they say, because we watched a few of your videos in the portfolio, and they'll feel like yours, but they're also different because you can tell you've adapted it to the couple. And that's the ideal situation, is for someone to look at your work and be like, that all feels like your work, but it's not the same video every single time.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the most important things to say about a style, isn't it? Is that, for me, a style is a summary of, your skill as, a camera person, the inspiration sources that you hold or the values that you hold, and also your adaptability to kind of, like you say, whatever's put in front of you, you still present that in a way which feels authentic to you. And it kind of, style and approach and kind of that all kind of, I do think do blur into one quite a way. But for me, kind of, if you talk about the word style, it's almost kind of linked in kind of intrinsically almost to brand. Yep. In that if you look at someone's work, go, that's very much their style, or with, whilst looking at a very short piece of footage or a very small piece of a gallery, you get an idea of what that person is about.
Yeah. And it's important to have you can fall into that trap of basically finding the way that you want to do things and applying that to every wedding, and then you end up with that sort of cookie cutter approach. So I've been a victim of this myself. Not a victim of myself, that I've done a wedding which was probably quite classy and it was very like happy and joyful and that kind of thing. But I wouldn't say it was like fun and energetic.
Yeah.
But because I was sort of advertising myself as that way, I felt like I needed to make it into that.
Yeah.
And a year later, I sort of looked back at the video and I was like, I don't think I've done this justice. And I re-edited the highlights film in a way that I would do it now. And I'd done it so much more justice because I wasn't just thinking, I need to get into this like very small, like put this square peg in this round hole. Instead, I gave myself the flexibility to still have my style. Like it's still a happy video, but it doesn't need to be very like
very much. Yeah, I think I say is almost is having a style. I believe that you need a style, and for some people to go, I don't believe a style exists. We're wedding photographers or we're wedding videographers. That's your style. I think that's definitely wrong. There are so many ways to skin this cat of a day that you need to have a style for people to understand what you're about.
But the people that say that still have a style.
They do, they do. Naturally, I think you do. But if you are, like you say, a creative person. The things that kind of go in and your inspiration sources and the values you hold as a person very much influence what comes out, and that's your style. Yeah. But like you said, I think there's a difference between having a style and then becoming pigeonholed, where like you say, you just become cookie cutter, that everybody goes, well, that's my style, so everybody gets the same thing. That's not having a style, that's just becoming stale, I think.
Or if you turn up to a super like really, really fun wedding where there's loads going on and you just make a really romantic, emotional thing, and it's like you have, of course that's what you specialize in, but it doesn't mean you have to create that. Like you blend your style around what's in front of you.
Yeah, very much so.
And I think a style is like, if you're listening to this, you probably have a style, like, unless you're in your first few weddings. But a style is equally what you don't do as much as what you do.
That's huge. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you are somebody who's like, there's no chance I'm ever going to take a smoke grenade to a wedding, that's your style. Like that's a part of your style, is that you wouldn't see someone with smoke grenades at your wedding. So like you don't maybe want that gimmick or that kind of thing at the wedding. So it's, when you're thinking about, if you're sat here thinking right now, like, oh, what is my style? I think equally about what you don't do. Like, if you're someone who doesn't like using the gimbal, that's very much, you do handheld style.
Yeah.
Like, pretty much, isn't it? Like,
and that is a look, isn't it? Like, in itself, and thus kind of helping to build towards your style. And I think you do find that, although, like I say, I would say that, my style I have, and it follows a kind of a blend of, there are very much documentary moments in what I do, but then there also are some moments which are quite editorial. And again, I don't like using that word at the moment because I think it's got connotations, but there is stuff in there which you go, well, no, that wouldn't look out of place in a magazine. But then there's also stuff which, like in like a group scenario, people go, oh, your groups are really natural, but I still have to corral those people into a piece of ground that has a nice background and nice light. Yeah. So you're still curating that. So it is posed. Isn't it? Or even like that, I would say to people, I don't pose my couples on my couple shoot. I don't. I might direct them and go, oh, we're going to walk this way, or oh, you can maybe just stand there. Yeah. I definitely don't move people's hands or go, oh, I want you to like, kind of put your arms around his neck, or I want you to rub, and that stuff, which that if you are in that really overly posed style, you probably have to force that or spend far longer doing that. Yeah. But there's still an effort of direction, isn't there? Yeah. And I think sometimes you have to kind of like exaggerate things to kind of, because people assume certain things. Yeah. Like if I said to people on my kind of like style, oh, well, I'm like semi-posed, I'll still take you out and we'll do this and that, but it will still look really natural, people won't get it. No. You almost have to kind of exaggerate that, go, I'm an unposed wedding photographer, but I guarantee that probably 85% of my couples, when we get out on a couple shoot, go, well, what do you want me to do?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And then when you go to
but if you went, I'm semi-posed, then the people who don't want to be posed won't book you then, straight away. And
then the people that want loads of direction go, well, are you going to direct me or not? Yeah. It's kind of looking at that, and it's kind of almost spelling it out in a way that I think sometimes to a degree you can get away with you kind of have to almost over exaggerate things in the way that you advertise yourself.
Yeah.
And when people get to the day, they're still looking for that from you. Like, I think it would be really weird. Not that I've done it. If you used these people that say I'm 100% documentary.
Yeah.
Like, I find that really odd how you can turn up and have absolutely, it's a style, and I'm sure there's people out there would want that.
Yeah.
But for me, I wouldn't like the fact that I would walk away and go, I feel like I didn't speak to my photographer once, or I have no idea what they did, or like, oh, we've got, and again, there's markets for
really
everything.
Rare from my perspective. As someone who works with photographers at every wedding, I can tell you that there's a lot of photographers out there who set, like, their main thing is like documentary wedding photographer. They're still doing 10, 15 minutes a couple shoot at least. Do you know what I mean? Probably even more than what you do.
Yeah.
So they're saying documentary, but there's still like, it's still an expectation to do that part of like.
This is something that I put in my notes, which I said to you I wanted to ask you about, because obviously, we spoke about it kind of at length in the past, is that I don't use second shooters. I have it over the kind of 300 plus weddings that I've done. I've only ever used second shooter once or twice. So obviously, I've seconded for other people and seen the way that they do things and know what they sell themselves as.
Yeah.
And then see what they actually do. But for the most part, I guess I am quite sheltered in that other people's work that I look at, I'm as much of a victim of what they show me on their Instagram, because I don't see that behind the curtain by working with them on a wedding.
Yeah.
But obviously, say you work with pretty much a different photographer, or probably say 35 weddings of a year, there might be 25 different photographers.
Yeah.
So you see
a huge variety of prices.
And a whole different price range or a style that, the couple might send you and go, oh yeah, we've picked this photographer, and you look at them and their website could be like literally like someone, they've ripped the centre page out of Vogue, and you're expecting them, or you go into that with a preconceived of like, I have no idea how I'm going to get my natural bits, because it's going to be really this. And then you get to the day and it's not.
Yeah.
So, and the couple are getting that same experience, aren't they, as well?
It's very much that. I because of our style, like it's very like colourful and like lots of movement and laughing and stuff during the couple shoot. I get quite nervous actually when I get like a couple will say, here's my photographer, and it ends up being like that kind of like magazine style, like all black and white, hand touching face, very serious looking. I'll get a bit worried because I'm like, how am I going to work with these people?
Yeah.
I'd say probably 80%, 90% of the time, I always get on with them absolutely fine, but I'd say 80 to 90% of the time they are doing like the movementy, laughy bits in between, but they're just not posting that. They're posting a really serious like shot of them in front of a gate or something that looks at it like
so what we're saying, I guess, is that not that style is a lie, but at the same time, I think when you are trying to inject your style or profess your style kind of in your marketing, that I think sometimes you do have to kind of overboard that a little bit to make that point stand out. Otherwise, we would all kind of blend into kind of a sea of more of the same.
Yeah.
You kind of have to like exasperate certain parts of what you really want to do.
Definitely, and exaggerate it. I think there are some exceptions. Like if you're talking about photographers, like there are photographers that will bring a light around everywhere they go, or they'll bring like a multi-flash setup for like church, like couple shots and stuff like that. Like that's going in deep to like people that are doing things their own way. But I'd say from 1,300 quid to £6,500, the photographers I've worked with, they're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
They're literally just doing it in nicer places probably, and posting what the people at their price range want to see.
Or the other things that they've got going on in their brand and stuff. That kind of makes you justify that worth, whether it's experience or say the kind of curation or whatever. But in terms of
what you wear on a wedding day, as well.
And like we're kind of we're trying not to get into brand too much, although it's still kind of on our minds after kind of dunking ourselves in that tank after the workshop. But for me, like kind of if we're talking about the terms of style here, for me that's much more kind of intrinsically to kind of the way that you work on a wedding day. Or what you say, would you say that you particularly crave like dark spaces with window light and make yourself more dark and moody, or do you naturally blow your highlights, or those things, which I guess in some ways style does transfer across to editing as well, where we've spoken about this in the past, where if you have 6 photographers and give them the same raw file, there's so much that you can inject kind of style in the way that you edit as much as you can is in the way that you shoot. And I think, and maybe naively, we were talking about this before we jumped on the pod, is that in video there's even more scope for that. Yeah.
So if you think about giving the same photo to 6 different photographers, and then imagine giving the same 50 clips to 6 different videographers. So not only is it grading, it's also, do you slow it down to 50%, 25%? What music do you use? Do you do fast cutting? Do you put ceremony speeches in the background? Like there's so much more of those building blocks and the editing. So arguably I'd say it's easier to stand out for video than it is for photo, because you've got like what you've got to play with, like the shot basically.
There's a lot more. Yeah, that's it. For us, I would say that really once you've taken that frame on the day, the only way to inject your style after that is because your composition's done at that point. Is color grade really, and kind of format where, like you say with you, it could be, if you think of some videographers that, if you asked to define their style, it would be really choppy edits, really fast moving clips, and lots of them come in thick and fast, where some people's then are these almost really exasperated long pans and kind of cinematic transitions and viewpoint changes. Or some people there was a fad kind of a little while ago, people did a lot of whip pans, panning in and out of things and stuff, and that. But it's a style, isn't it? And if you want that, like you want your wedding video to look like you're in a rap music video, then that's a style. Yeah,
but that was kind of, that leads me on to like there was a moment where I thought I wanted to be that. Like I went for that, like that fire and ice, dramatic, cinematic, cool transitions, that kind of thing, and because that's what I enjoy watching. Yeah. But I didn't realise that what I enjoy watching isn't necessarily what I want to make. Because I love these wedding films. They're so well made. They've zoomed into a newspaper, like one of the wedding newspaper, for example, and then it goes into like it zooms into and the couples suddenly move and then it turns into a couple shot and things like that. And I love that stuff. So I tried to make some of that stuff, and I tried to sort of go into it because I enjoy watching that. That's given me inspiration. But then I always found that a few months afterwards, I'd look back at that and be like, in 20 years, is that really going to translate to? Yeah. And that's where my mind's going, is if I was getting married and I had that video, that would look really cool to me. But in 30 years, when I'm showing my kids, I don't know if they're going to appreciate that then as much as they'd appreciate just what a bog standard wedding, like a quite a natural flowing wedding film.
And I think it's hard, isn't it? And I think this, and for me, I think that's probably one of the biggest changes in my style over the last couple of years have come from, is I think when you're younger as well, not that I'm not old, but I'm older than some people that are coming into the industry now, is that when you come in, is you do see yourself as quite young and you want to kind of embrace these like cool things, don't you? Like, I want to do this, I want to get smoke bombs out, I want to do this. And it looks really epic. But I think it's not until you've gone and got married yourself or have been in the industry for a while, and I definitely wouldn't say that I'm jaded either and go, I've seen it all, because I haven't. Yeah. But I think you start to look at the longevity of your work more. Like when you're first coming in, you're excited and like, I want to do all this cool shit. And then now you're kind of like, I'm at your wedding day, so that when you are old, you can sit in your rocking chair with your grandkid on your lap and look through my gallery and still feel that you can bring them to your day. Yeah. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean you're not allowed to spray champagne or do whatever, but I think you come at things with a deeper understanding of, because you've been in the industry for a long time now, you have got people who you made those fire and ice style films for maybe 8 to 10 years ago, and that's what they've got. Like, say it's the lasting document of your day because you thought it was cool at the time. Yeah. Where if you have something then which is maybe a little bit more turned down, still very, very polished, very kind of on your style, but it still shows kind of much more of what you're about, or that both the grandparents in that film have sadly passed away now. Yeah. They see their own footage in a different way. Yeah. Like when they're young, they want to just run through the field with a smoke bomb and be like, what? But then in 10 years' time, when their nan's not here,
shot they're going to be watching
they
back.
Just want to watch. They want to see her sobbing during the speech and that sort of stuff. And I think with age and with kind of longevity in the industry, I think that's been one of the biggest changes to my style. I think as well, and I also say, I was talking about this to someone the other day, is that I think because COVID and then my dad passing all came at the same time, I think that made me a lot more sentimental. Before that, I was like, this is fun, I get to run around and do this and do that. And I think then kind of being more like the seriousness of photographing, or what we were doing photographing those weddings during COVID, and then kind of the fact of, say, like my own dad passing away and being like, well, like I never had a video on my wedding day, and what I'd give now to be able to have, like, to hear him laugh or do that. I've got some photos which are hugely precious, but I would much rather like some shots of him rather than it be loads of me like doing cartwheels down a hill or whatever because I got married outdoors, or or whatever it is. And I think sometimes it's, I know we've spoken about this kind of in the lead up, is that things happen to you or kind of things knock you on your journey which then force your style to change. But I think that's perfectly okay, that your style will evolve in that way. And as you get older, in the same way that your music taste change or your clothes taste change, or the things that you like change, that your style needs to move with you. Because I think it always needs to, and this is something that I've put in my notes, is your style, I think, always needs to be authentic.
Yeah.
Like the people that do the styles that you aspire to really well is because that's the way that their brain works, or that's what's authentic to them.
Yeah.
And to turn up to a wedding day, if someone said to me, we want to book you, but we want something really overly posed, my style would have to change away from something that I'm not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I'd spend the whole day second guessing, have I taken them out for long enough? I need to go on the internet and research loads of these really cool editorial poses so I know how to put them. That the day would just be a disaster from my point of view, because I would be actively trying to make somebody else's gallery.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, like you say, over time you realise like what is important to you basically.
Yeah.
And often being authentic in your style is about figuring out what's important to you, because you can't rock up at a day where the thing that's really important to you is capturing candids, but the thing that's really important to the couple is just getting all these like nice, like amazing shots down. Like
they've allowed 30 minutes for drinks reception because they want to fit loads of other stuff in. And you got no time to work.
And equally, if there's a trend that's going like of style of video and something, you're jumping on it, but that's not authentic to you, that's going to wear down on you eventually, or you're going to eventually like start hating it because it's not the sort of the thing that you want to produce.
I guess it's the equivalent now, isn't it, of a couple like me jumping on a call with a couple and them going, we really want you to deliver our gallery in spot colour.
Yeah, exactly.
Which they can want that. They're entitled to find that. And I think it's what you say is also, and it's a really valid point that you've put in your notes, is there is a style out there for everybody.
Yeah.
And there is a market for everybody. And as your style evolves, your client might slightly change. Or if you really love spot colour, that's your favourite, that you think it's still the coolest thing since sliced bread is to black and white photos and accentuate colour.
Yeah.
There will still be people out there that want it. And just find them people. You can do what you absolutely makes you beam, and they're really happy. But like, we went through 20 photographers who laughed at us when we told us we wanted spot colour.
Yeah.
And we found you, and it's a marriage made in heaven, isn't it? And
it works. I've worked with photographers that I'm looking at, and I'm like, as if you're still doing that. And the couple love it.
Yeah. And
I'm just like, okay, fair enough. Like, it doesn't matter because they found the couple who like that stuff.
Like, I'm sure that I had a request, and I think it was this side of the pandemic as well, that someone said to me, is the dinosaur shot still a thing? My sister had that. I thought it was brilliant. And I literally was like, no.
I'll be walking right out of there.
No. It might be a thing,
but
not from me. I couldn't think of anything more cringy, anything more ridiculous.
That's why. So people, I feel that you kind of end up with people who are similar to you because your values very much show in the way that you create your art or photo or video.
Or you might share those values, like we've just said about kind of being more sentimental. You might then attract people that are.
Because you've shared, because what you're sharing on Instagram, it's depending on what your brand is and things like that, I guess. But what you're sharing in Instagram generally is what you believe in.
Yeah.
Right. And if you believe in that, then people who also believe in that are going to be gravitated towards you. And so if you start changing, like, let's say you feel the need to go really like posed and high end and dramatic and get rid of some of your candid shots because the light's not good and too many kids and yada yada, like, then you'll start getting couples who are like, we're going away for an hour for a couple shoot, and that you start getting photographers who are a bit more posing, and maybe you've got to step in and do video, and then like before you know it, you're at weddings you don't want to be at, and you're like, okay, this is not a bit of me, just because you felt like you needed to hop on that editorial trend.
Or you think that's the like leading on from what we said about there's kind of a market at all levels and a market at all styles. Is that you don't have to change your style in order to level up. And I think, and this is something that we kind of, again, I don't want to kind of go into too much because it is stuff that we kind of covered in the workshop, is that the people out there that are charging a lot of the big money, their weddings look like that because the weddings that they're at look that way. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're shooting a much more budget wedding, everything in it doesn't look as good. Which is why that your photo doesn't look as good. Like, your style might still be very similar to the guy that's charging 4 times as much as you, but you can still only photograph what's in front of you. Although you curate, again, what lens you use, how you edit it, and the rest of it, there's still a certain element of all of that, isn't there? So it's not always that your style is wrong or you need to change your style in order to level up. It's just finding those people or people who see value in the style that you offer.
Very true. And you're looking at, like you said before, about how like the amount of photos you show is like 0.001% of what you take. If you think that you're looking at 0.001% of your Premier Inn wedding, the top 0.001% of your Premier Inn wedding photos is going to be completely different to the top 0.001% of someone's heads to house photos. So you might be at the bit like as good a photographer and as honed in and like as technically good as they are, but the locations matter just as much as well.
Very, very much so.
And style actually does translate. I haven't written this, but does translate to the sort of venues that you want to film at as well, I think.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you go from, I think the natural progression for me has been like, you know, New Forest hotels, quite old school, that kind of thing, with like to barns, to like more modern barns. And then I think like the higher end goes to more like the houses, stately houses and things like that, doesn't it?
Well, that's it, or who you are as people again, or what you enjoy. Like if you go, if you're someone that grew up riding horses, and then you play polo, you know, kind of as a teen, you might want to go to the local polo club for your wedding. Where if you were someone that you kind of grew up and you were playing football or whatever, the idea of having your wedding at your local football club so you can get like your group shot in the stand might be like the best idea in the world. But it's very different kind of things, isn't it? Like if you're a quiet reserve couple, you wouldn't book a nightclub for your wedding, would you?
No.
But at the same time, if you were a party people, you wouldn't book a library for your wedding. it's that, like I say, the venue is very much kind of, or you do their style of their wedding. In the same way that they probably judge us on our portfolios and the things that we put out, we probably make those same assumptions that if you get an inquiry land in your inbox, that even if it doesn't say too much, is that we're this and we're that. Yeah. If you know that they've booked like this ceremony and then they get on a party boat to take them round, you know, on a lap afterwards, you're expecting like Ibiza vibes, aren't you? Or like boat party vibes. Where if someone says to you, we've booked like a really small intimate ceremony with 35 people, we're going for a private dinner at this restaurant, and then we're just having like a back room of a pub with no DJ, and we're going to play board games under candlelight, you're not expecting there to be smoke bombs and you know, at that wedding, are you? It's so
you know what you're looking for.
Yeah, you're making assumptions on the style of that day based on what the
location and what they've got going on.
Of it.
I think there are certain venues I look at when I get the inquiries, and I'm like, this is not a bad thing, because venues, like obviously venues have a style as well, but there are certain venues I look at and I get an inquiry for, and I can sort of almost, without being too blunt about it, put that wedding into a box and be like, okay, it's going to be this style because it's at this venue, sort of thing.
But people put us in boxes when they look at our websites. Whether they want to admit that or not, they do. And I think that's why, like we were saying kind of a few minutes ago, is that I think sometimes you sometimes do have to be a little bit more stereotypical, I think, or kind of really kind of exaggerate the elements of your style that you really want to lean into, because if you don't make that front and center and really exaggerate that, people don't get the message clear enough, so that they put you in a box. Like if they come onto your website, like you said, you actively changed the first image on your website, on your that it was a group shot of people throwing confetti, all laughing. So the first impression they got and the first box they put you into was fun. Whereas the first shot that came onto their website was like a bride watching someone speak with tears running down her eyes in like a slightly soft focus black and white. You're straight in the emotive box. And if you're one of those people that doesn't want shots of you looking at that on your wedding day, you're out the door. They're not even looking at the rest of it. And I know that links into brand and the rest of it, but style is kind of really confined in those. Your couples are doing it as much to you as you're doing it to them.
But that first photo should really represent the rest of your style, shouldn't it?
Yeah, so definitely.
Like that's why it ties into brand, sort of thing. But I think it's what you said about age is quite interesting, because I've put that. It was only really after planning my own wedding and having my own wedding, and like you say, just being in tune with those certain things that like, people on their wedding day want, and what I'm going to appreciate now looking back at my wedding photos and videos, that I realised what I did want, if you know, what I wanted to capture in a way. Because I've changed my style a lot since I've still very much honed into like, we're going to get more guest shots than your other videographers probably would. But at the same time, like, I know that like we've got some of our couple portraits on our wall. That stuff I really appreciated, but that stuff I really undersold to my couples. And I've had conversations with you at weddings where I've gone, I wish I had couples who wanted like 20 minutes just to like hang about and get couple shots. And like so many times, because of the kind of brand that I had, I was getting, are we done yet? Like, can we go back to the thing? And it's like, okay, clearly I have to change something.
I think we spoke about it, and I did something similar again. I think I pushed that, like, I'm so natural drum so hard sometimes. Like you say, that in the end you get people that go, we don't really want a couple shoot. And it's like,
And then you realise that you do value that.
I do want that.
Yeah.
I just don't want it to, like, again, maybe we were a victim of our own style where we thought that if we pushed too much on, we really like couple shoot stuff, that then people would think you're editorial and want to spend an hour out. Yeah. And you kind of, say, your style is constantly evolving, and almost we are learning from our mistakes, aren't we? Or do you find as well from your wedding that maybe, and I wonder if this happens to all wedding suppliers, is that you book your suppliers with kind of the best faith, and then you kind of, when you're looking for style, you think you know what you want. But like I say, once you get the final thing back, go, oh, well, maybe that, I like this, but I kind of wish if I'd have done it, if it was come from me and I'd made that for somebody else, I'd know that I'd want more of this. And you learn so much more when it's your family and your stuff in it. Like, I think you have a greater sense of empathy once you've kind of been through that funnel of
I can definitely pick bits out of those, wedding photos and videos and stuff that I would be like, that, I wish I had more of that. Yeah. But then that's been had a positive effect on my business because I wish I had more of that.
Yeah.
I'd hope that the couples that I film want more of that as well. But equally, I have become, changed a little bit to like tone down the fun elements and things like that, because I'm thinking of the future and what I'd be like in 20, 30 years time and things like that, and thinking more about capturing certain emotive parts of the day. Like, that 10 minutes after the ceremony now is probably my favourite time of the day, where everyone's hugging and you're literally like, you're following the bride around and they're hugging nan and dad and bridesmaids and stuff like that. That's probably my favourite part of the day now. And I've got that on my website, and I stand by that. I think that's the most, just like, you're full spirits after the ceremony, everything's happy, and now you get to say hello to everyone, and the bride's seeing everyone there for the first time. It's just, it's a really nice moment, whereas I wouldn't have even thought of anything like that before my own wedding.
It's a really interesting thing, isn't it? I think in style is real kind of, it is kind of real, like, I don't know what's the word, like a loose jelly of kind of a thing to kind of get hold of, because it encompasses so many things. So kind of sit here and go, this is style, because it takes in, say, like elements of your approach and elements of your brand and all of those things. So I think we are definitely skirting around the same thing with it and trying to kind of pull at loads of bits. But I think, I don't know how far we are in now, but hopefully that's given you like a little bit of kind of, but isn't it kind of something to think about in when you are thinking of your style? I'm not saying that if you're single you don't have a style, because and you need to get married to do it, but I think it's just kind of evidencing, isn't it, that we are on a journey, and just because you think that you have to have a style, it doesn't mean that the style you pick you're stuck with for the rest of your days, and that there are probably multiple styles in everybody's wedding. So if you are sit there scrolling other people's websites and Instagrams and thinking, oh, they do this really well, there's probably a lot of what you're already doing in their galleries as well. And it's just kind of really honing in on certain bits of it. And it's okay that as you get older or as your preferences change, that your style can change with it.
Don't feel like you can't change because you feel like you've sort of marketed yourself into a hole, basically. Like, there's always room for change. And again, like, don't feel like you have to edit someone's wedding in a certain way, because again, like, you put yourself in that hole. If their wedding is completely different, I'm sure they'd much more appreciate you editing in the way that represents their wedding best, rather than being like, oh yeah, but they booked me for this, so I'm going to do this sort of thing.
Look, I couldn't imagine anything worse than having a couple that were really shy and kind of anxious, but at the same time they've booked you because they want something really natural, because they don't want to pose, then you go, well, I'm high energy, you've booked me, that's what you're getting, and you're more shoving a smoke bomb in their hand and making them do something, because it's not going to be authentic to them, and then you're going to just feel like, what am I filming, because they just look so awkward, and then it's not going to be high energy at all, and it's like, well,
I've shown, over the last few months, I've shown a lot more couple stuff on my website than I used to, on my Instagram and I guess my website, than I used to, and I'm starting to get, like I say, more couples who you talk to them on the day and they're like, oh, we're going to go for a couple shoot at this time. And it's like that's starting to peer through now. So you can, not like that my whole style has changed. I'm just getting couples now who are like, when I'm like, what's important to you? They're like, oh, there's a field at the back that's really important to us. Rather than saying, oh, nothing really, just capture the ceremony. They're saying like, oh, well, if sunset is there, that's quite important to us. And that's quite nice. Like, it is a little bit of it's a small change that will make a big difference to how I film, I think. Yeah,
and also for you to go and get off a call and kind of give yourself a pat on the back and go, it's working. Like, I've shown this, like I've offered it, I've dangled that carrot, and they've understood that, and it shows that you've communicated your style in a really good way. Well, and I think that's probably a lot of things. Is what you think you're putting out might not always be what you're getting back. So always do the chances are it's not the couples that are wrong, it's probably you.
Yeah,
so if you are
in some
finding
way.
that you are getting mismatched, people are expecting something that you're not giving or you don't want to do, the chances are is that maybe what you are putting out
isn't what you think.
Isn't what it is not being interpreted in the way that you think it is.
Yeah. I put down just 3 things for like thinking about your style. How do you want to film? If you're someone that's quite minimal, like we spoke to Rue last week, and he was like, I wanted to film in the same way I took photos, which is using minimal gear and things like that. If you're someone like that, then forcing yourself to use a gimbal because you want to look really cinematic or have those sort of smooth shots is going to grind on you over time.
Yeah.
So how you want to film is important as well. I think about what you're comfortable with using camera wise and gear wise. How do you want to edit? Again, the same thing with me talking about the fire and ice videos earlier.
Yeah.
They took so long to edit, and like you have to really, really think about every little transition and thing.
I guess you think about how you shoot as well, especially when you're doing those like whip pan videos. You need to make sure, okay, well, I whipped left on the right one, so if that's going to come into this, I need to make sure I come back in on the left.
And you're always thinking about that. And for me, like, that took up all of my brain power to the point where I was missing the bits that I now think are important. So when I say how you want to edit, I mean, like, I would sit down and edit those videos, and it would exhaust me. And I realised that if I wanted to do 30 to 35 wins a year, I couldn't edit them all in that way because it would take too long. And I know people that do. And those are the wedding videos I enjoy watching, but not the ones I enjoy making.
But don't you think you enjoy watching them because you appreciate the work that's gone into it, you've tried to do them?
Probably.
Or also, you kind of look at that, and I think that as well about style is that, say, what you always look at and consume, I can appreciate styles that very much aren't mine, but I know that I could never make it. Yeah. And I wonder if sometimes that's why I appreciate it more. Like, do you know what I mean? As you kind of get older, I look at things and go, I could do that. And so it's good, but I know I could make that. Yeah. But when I look at somebody else's work and go, I wouldn't have a clue where to start with that, that makes me kind of be more impressed by it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, I maybe couldn't do that. Yeah.
Something that you wouldn't necessarily put into it, but you can appreciate it. And that's the important thing about like comparing yourself to others. Like, other people may live in different areas. They may have better venues, better access to certain things. And it doesn't mean you should look at their work and be like, I wish I did that. Yeah. Maybe their style is the same as yours. They're just getting the different ways of portraying it.
And that's probably worth saying as well. Again, like, and it's something that gets brought up quite a lot when it comes to, and I feel we spoke about Instagram a lot in this, is that obviously you shoot where you shoot as well, and that has an element on your style. Yeah. Like, I live here on the coast in Portsmouth, so I do by proxy get quite a few weddings by the sea, and some people can say that's my style, where if you live like in the Lake District, the chances are you're going to be shooting a lot of mountains and a lot of lakes, and that will become your style, because sometimes geography has an answer as well. Like, if you live in some of the rainiest parts of North England, you can't even say that your style is similar to people that live on sunny beaches in California. Yeah. Although your approach to the day and your kit and everything might be very much the same, the kind of your geography, the look is different, is still very evident to your. You can't look at that and go, why is their light so bright? Or look at like, you know, destination weddings in Greece and go, how is their blue sky so crisp? It's like, because the sea is that colour, the sky is that colour out there, and it's authentic to that, isn't it? And that's such a big thing as well. Yeah, location makes a big difference, actually. That's a very good point. Yeah, I never thought about that, kind of thinking that would have a difference on your style. But yeah, it's just the sort of rabbit hole you end up in with like your local venues and things like that. And of course you travel and things, but I think most people probably film a lot more at their local places than they do elsewhere. Or when you're beginning, you start in those places, and so your style has developed, doesn't it? If you go, all of a sudden I want to become a desert wedding photographer, you know, and you live in a city, then that's going to take some work, isn't it, to develop that style? Like, and lastly, what do you believe in? Obviously, we've spoken about this, so that's fine. I don't need to go into it, but you're going to grind yourself down if you're filming too much of what you don't think you actually believe in. Or what if you're filming lots of what you wouldn't want for your own wedding? Maybe that would probably grind you down. I think that's probably the biggest one. Out of the 3 prongs that you've got there, how do you want to make the content? How do you want to edit/grade it? And also, like, what do you believe in is probably the most. I think that hampers the other 2 as well. Like, I believe that I should have a positive impact on the day, but without overbearing it. And because of that, that's why I use minimal gear, so that I'm not having to like set my tripod up everywhere or carry a light with me, because that's too intrusive. And they do kind of go in this circle of kind of, and all of them are intrinsically linked. But I think for me, if I had to kind of pick one of them which defined the core of my style, I think it would be me and my beliefs over my colour grade or
definitely,
or how I shoot.
And I see that in the way that you shoot as well, like, and the things that you talk about, and even the things that you've taught me, like the thing after the ceremony. I think you might have said that to me about the 10 minutes after the ceremony.
And for me, I think it's that. It's kind of, but again, that I think sometimes comes from experience. I've definitely changed my approach of when I do things. Yeah. I think that's the other thing as well, which is probably an episode in itself, is in my style, I've changed that when I do certain things to make that suit my style better. Like I know a lot of photographers that will finish the ceremony and take people for groups straight away because they want them done. And then go, we can go back to the drinks. Yeah. But like you said, all those, and then the way you worded it was far better than I could. That kind of warmth that comes from that excitement post the ceremony. But I know that it's better to let that happen, soak it up, and then within 20 minutes or half an hour of a 2-hour drink reception, the canapés are starting to come out. Everyone's got their drink, they've got their canapé, and they're stood in little pockets of conversation. Yeah. And if you start doing groups at that point, you're not distracting much. Yeah. You're not killing that moment dead. Yeah. So in order for me to be a natural, kind of photographer or videographer, we're moving. I'm still doing a couple. I'm still doing a couple shoot. I'm still doing a group shoot. I'm still doing candids. But where you put those things can make such a difference on your style.
100%. And I do really notice now when people do like the couple shots or the group shots immediately after the ceremony. That I really notice that now because I notice the day never recovers. Yeah, by the time the bride and groom have gone back to their guests are already a few drinks in, like not bothered anymore because they haven't seen them like pretty much all day. It's like, oh, okay, you don't really get that like hype straight afterwards. And even the thing in the morning of you saying that when brides get ready at their house and like you find certain things that are important to them, like all of those little things are.
I think, and
what
again,
you believe in, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm a very sentimental person, and objects and place and things that are hugely important to me. Where if some people just book like a Holiday Inn hotel room, it's cold as hell. It looks like every other's in that block. Yeah. So there's not that stuff to dig into, and so that's why I don't get as excited about those places. And it's not to say again that I don't go to them, but it's not those elements of the day then that I would really push and go, this is amazing. Yeah.
Great.
I think that's probably good. I think we exhausted the idea of style, but hopefully there's plenty in there for you to think about and maybe just question your own style, or are you being true to your style, or are you too scared to do what you think you really believe in because you think that people won't like it? And
I think we speak to people sometimes who are like, I really like to do this, but I just don't think I'm
just not brave enough, or I don't think people like it. And I think I can say now is just be brave and try it. You might surprise yourself.
Yeah, life's too short. You need to be doing what you believe in, and especially in the job where you have so much control over what you do. I think it's now or never, basically.
That's it. I think that's a perfect place to leave it as well. Right. Yeah. So again, thank you for listening to the Rue episode. If you're new here, we appreciate having you along. If you've been here for a long time, then we appreciate you sitting for another hour of us talking, and do all the things that you always do to help this podcast kind of grow and be heard by more people. The likes, the shares, the comments, the reviews. What else
all of the things, message us if you've got any questions or things you'd like us to talk about as well.
Amazing. So I think from there it's time to wrap it up, meal deal time, and I'll see you
in the next one.